Hi, this is Lucy, and this is?
River.
What do you think of the phrase, with great power comes great responsibility?
I think that people use it very, very often without necessarily knowing what it means. I mean, the obvious thing is that power corrupts absolutely, and so the responsibility to not be corrupted probably is the great responsibility.
Would you say that this would also apply to superior intellect or superior strength, for example?
In some capacity, yes, but I would imagine it would be entirely situational. You know, a strong man and a spelling bee is not very strong. If you have all the things and you're a lucky guy, then maybe, but I think not so much in all situations. Just depends on the room you're in.
Would you say that this would also apply between an adult and their cat or their dog, for example?
Well, yeah, because that's like a sort of person versus non-person relationship, dependent versus non-dependent. So yeah, totally.
What would be the bare minimum that you expect from that adult towards that cat or dog?
I'm not sure. Food, sustenance, love, basically that. Yeah.
Do you purchase like cows, fish, etc., like
do.
eggs, dairy, or wear leather, or go to animal circuses, things like that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. And I used to be vegan, so there's that. But now I get most of my beef from a local cattle rancher, and then the same with the eggs.
Would it be okay if I showed you a 3-minute video on the standard practices in animal agriculture?
I would know it. I do. I already know all of it. Like I said, I was vegan for probably 3 or 4 years. And yeah, the animal agriculture industry is very nasty. I know all about the slaughterhouses and the factory farms and milk houses and all that stuff. So happy to chat about those if you'd like.
You mentioned that you do care about the welfare of animals because you buy from these small farms. Mm-hmm. Okay, I have a challenging question about that.
Yeah.
All right. How do you humanely kill someone who doesn't want to die?
You don't. I mean, humane, root of the word human. Humane, I think, is a trade-off in all scenarios. When you're trying to do something humanely, it is, I think, to the best of your human ability to do it as kindly as you possibly can. And in some situations, it's not kind to the other party. You know, how do you humanely kill? Well, you don't. It is just not that at all. It's rather kind of a series of personal trade-offs and like, what am I willing to not do and what am I willing to do? And some people, I don't know, make different choices. Yeah.
All right. Going back to the first question that I asked you, would you say that animals in animal agriculture are vulnerable to humans?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, anything and everything is vulnerable to humans, right? Like we're the apex predator or whatever, and we have consciousness, and we can't prove that other animals do. So anything and everything is vulnerable to a human. An ant or a dolphin or maybe even an alien.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see about that, I guess. If they do come. Yeah. All right. So we mentioned, between an adult and a cat and a dog, we would expect, food, shelter, etc. Would you say that this bare minimum is met in animal agriculture?
No, definitely not. There are a lot of really good small farmers who love and take care of their animals and know how to provide them with good life. And then, yeah, they kill them at the end of that. And that, I think that can be debated on how humane that is. But it's also been, their way of life for 4, 5, 6 generations out here. So when you start separating people from the thing that makes them who they are, things get rough. But no, in terms of, meat production as a industrial process, it's far from humane, or milk production or any animal product really.
So of course it's very embedded in our culture, right? Even I wasn't born vegan for sure, so that was also my culture. Can you think of anything that we've done in history that we have stopped doing because of ethical reasons?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, but the catch-22 is that the only ethical reasons that we pay attention to are human related, right? And those take a lot of time to undo as well. In terms of sort of the things we consume, not so much. humans in general are just notoriously terrible at doing anything ever preventative. Like they were terrible at doing anything preventative, whether it's climate change. Something needs to happen before we change. Like a good example is all the global warming stuff is like, there are plenty of things to do to mitigate that, but will those things get done? Well, not until we start seeing some really bad stuff happen, because people, again, are terrible at taking preventative measures for anything. I think that's my answer. Yeah.
So what can you cite anything that like we've stopped doing in the past that we're happy we've stopped, and that maybe involved jobs?
Yeah. So I think the key thing is that in all those cases it was killing people in some way or another, right? Not animals, people. So if you want to think about like, I don't know, PCPs and all sorts of nasty industrial solvents or asbestos or any of these things, leaded gasoline, for example. We stopped using those after we found out it was killing and harming people and making them sick. But that's not the case with anything that's non-human that I can think of.
Would you say that these things like asbestos was a good thing that we stopped, even if it might have lost some jobs in the process, the people who were producing that, for example?
Yes, but I think the challenge that you run into is that, like things like that are not cultural, right? Like a job is a job, whatever. But like out here in Montana, like cattle ranching, taking care of the cows, that's what this state was built on. That's what the people know. That's what their father's father was doing. If you talk about cattle ranching, it's like you're not really... Those cows wouldn't exist in the wild, not as they are anymore, maybe in, 100 generations of cattle ago. But in reality, those have been bred for, years and years and years and sort of genetically modified and through the natural process to be what they are today. They don't really function in the wild. For people that live out in the country, an hour away from here, this is like peak gentrification, and along with gentrification comes things like veganism, which seem completely disconnected from their lived reality. And so those two things go hand in hand. They're like, you don't know my life, you don't know how I've lived, you don't know my history and what we've sacrificed to have this, and my connection to the land. And there's trade-offs out here too. Like, Montana soil is not really fit for anything but cattle. The amount of water that you would need, because this is high desert, would be extreme to grow anything other than grass. I don't know. It's a sticky situation where you're like, like you wouldn't go to like India, for example. Really very deeply cultural connection to the food they eat. The ghee and butter and milk in the curry and all those things. And it's a hard thing to kind of point at that and be like, don't do that anymore. I don't know. Kind of rambly, so sorry.
No worries. If the roles were reversed and you were one of the animals in animal agriculture, and you were told that, and you could communicate in a human language, and you were told that the reason why you were exploited and killed is because it's a very important cultural aspect of our society, and also that it's hard to grow certain crops in Montana, for example, what would your response be to that?
I'd probably say moo. No, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess my response would be to shrug. Montana's number one export is beef. It's like the lifeblood of a lot of the people who live here. I live in a small town of 100 people. Most of them are cattle ranchers. So I go and interact with these people all day, and I don't know how I would respond if I was a cow. These people care very deeply about the land. They care very deeply about the health of the streams and the rivers and all these things. Yeah, like cattle ranching is cattle ranching, but it's also, these people are not running an industrial, ConAgra slaughterhouse. It's like they have 100 cattle, and they run them up and down the mountains all year. They're grazing on different public lands and all that stuff. Yeah.
I would kind of circle back to what we were talking about, like, how do you humanely kill someone who doesn't want to die, right? And we were kind of talking about,
yeah.
You can't really, right?
You can't really, but, it's, Yeah, there's no really way to do it humanely if that's what you're looking for. The people who are doing it are good people, most of the time. I'm sure there are bad people as well, but that's something they live with, right? And that's something they live by, which is like, all right, it's time to kill these cattle.
There are things in history that were cultural and that people were very attached to, that were things that we disconnected from because we thought they were unethical.
I mean, I can't think of one that's not a human one. Can you? Like if
no.
So if we're talking
but
like,
if you're talking about humans,
right? Like we could say slavery or genocide or like certain colonialistic things. Like you can look at someone who's killing a cow and being like, you're intentionally harming them, and it's like that's not probably how they see it. They probably are like, I need to put food on my table. So like when you're trying to project intentions onto something, it's like you don't actually know because you're not empathizing. You may not even.
I'm not saying like evil. I'm saying like you are harming them too. You're trying to kill them or you're trying to exploit them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. But again, I think intention is a funny thing. I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer for that.
Something that's also cool to know is, like you were talking about how these ranchers care about the land. Something that shocked me when I started researching this is that, for example, grass-fed beef is worse for the environment than factory farmed. I mean, both are actually horrible for the animals in terms of, cage-free, etc., because they all end up in the slaughterhouse, and there's all sorts of mutilations that accompany these industries, even if it's small farms, like castration, culling, things like this. So something that's really cool to know is that, by being vegan, you can actually really do a lot for the environment, because it's animal agriculture, even small farms, actually, they have a big impact on the environment. And it's like in the 3 top causes of environmental destruction and climate change,
yeah,
right?
It's huge, yeah.
I don't really care too much about talking about the intentions of ranchers, because I don't think it matters too much to say, like, oh, they're bad or they're good people. I think what really I'm trying to kind of focus on is, can we avoid having all these animals killed or exploited, And there are organizations that help farmers transition to like ecotourism or plant agriculture, so that they don't have to be just stranded.
To even, like, yes, there might be programs that do it, but how do they find out about those,
Tell them.
Yeah, you'd have to tell them. But then, like, you say ecotourism, what they hear is all the giant buildings that are getting boned. Or plant agriculture, yeah. But tourism is a dirty word out in the country. It's like, okay, well, my family lost their house in Bozeman and now it's a giant hotel. So that kind of thing, they'll just immediately say no, because what that means to them is, more people coming out, buying their land, rich people. Because very few of these ranchers are rich. They barely scrape by.
I'd like to ask you, what happened for you to not be vegan anymore? How did that...
I got unhealthy. I was not a very healthy vegan. I was poor at the time, and so I was eating a lot of beans and rice, and I was getting a lot of Beyond Burgers and things like that, and I just didn't eat enough, honestly. There's definitely a healthy way to be vegan, but I was not. So I'm about 175 pounds now, and when I was vegan, I was also vaping, so that was part of it, but I dropped about 50 pounds off where I am now. Is 125. I don't blame that on the veganism. It was like a confluence of things, but definitely wasn't getting adequate nutrition, and that's my fault. My stepfather's been vegan for 15 years, and he's a big guy, so it's not to say that veganism isn't healthy. I know it is healthier, but I don't know. It's partially just living out there with the ranchers. I think all that stuff is kind of influenced by the people you're around, and being out there, it's not so easy to get all the vegan products and all that stuff, and then I just enjoy it, and it's kind of one of the trade-offs that I decided to make, I guess.
Would you say that taste, pleasure, and culture is more important than the life of an animal?
I mean, when there's a degree of separation, you can't really, nobody goes to the store and looks at the piece of meat and is like, oh, there's the life of an animal, right? You're not the one killing the animal. So that degree of separation is like enough that people don't think about that. And you can't blame them, because it's like, well, that's already dead and right in front of me. I think most people can't even really compute that idea. I mean, it depends, right? Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with someone going out and hunting their food and eating their, providing food for themselves. I think where it gets bad is when you're talking like an economy of scale of murder or killing, right? Like people who buy half a cow one time a year don't hold a candle to the amount of food waste. I think it's like 58% or something, or 50% of food in the U.S. is thrown out. So that is the real evil to me, which is like there are many, many hungry people. There's a lot of murder going on, and probably 50% of it is unnecessary. Like if you're killing a cow, half that cow's going in the trash. So I think that's where to start, because everybody can agree on that, and then reduce that by half, and you're in a better place.
From the victim's point of view, meaning the animal who's killed, would you say that it matters to that animal if they're hunted or if like they're, wasted afterwards?
If I was hunted, I'd be like, fair game, you beat me. Yeah, I don't know. I know a lot of guys who hunt, and many of them are like, I was chatting with a couple the other day, and like, yeah, we don't use guns, we bow hunt. It's a question of ethics, really, and what those ethics are. Do I hunt? No. Do I fish? Yeah. But, I've grown up doing that. I don't know. Does the animal think it's fair? No, but I don't think fairness is necessarily something nature really thinks about.
So I just think like it's important, like you said, when we're at the store, it's really hard to remember the individual on the, like that's
Yeah.
the meat or that the eggs came from the dairy, whatever, right? Or the leather. And so I think it's important that each time that we do pay for these products, we remember that there's an individual, at least one at the other end of that has been exploited and killed on our behalf.
Yeah. It's like, yes, the way we treat animals is terrible, but the entire food system is absolutely fucked. So what I would say is that it's not so much about thinking about what's on the other side of what you're buying at the store, but rather knowing exactly where your food comes from. Because if you know where your food comes from, you can know that it was made well for you, and then also that it was treated well, as well as that can be up until death. And I think that part is, debatable whether that it's ethical or not. So, and that's where I'm at on all that. After post being a vegan, it's just knowing where your food comes from and paying attention to that, I think, is the most important thing, because otherwise it might be poison. Yeah.
And for the individual animal, though, like
What?
for the individual animal, if we can avoid to kill them, why would we? Like from the victim's point of view.
So if you know where your food comes from, yes, there are stores and things you can buy things from, but I live out in the boonies. Wintertime is brutal. From a self-sufficiency point of view, like I'm self-sufficient and I can exist without dependence on, a grocery store or another town. That's why. Yeah, I don't know. I think that would be the thing. As far as the individual animal goes, it sucks. I think it's just a very complex system. There's a lot that can be done. I'm not sure if I'm a believer in consumer activism. I think the onus is really on these mega corporations and the system that we have. I think that, consumer activism is noble, but that's about it.
We figured out that there's no way to humanely kill someone, so that's why I'm focused
Right.
on consumers.
Yeah. I think that just comes down to like what are your personal morals and ethics, and if you think something's fair or not. And
What
Yeah,
does the victim think?
what does the victim think? I wouldn't know. That's the piece. Is like, am
Well,
I a
if you
bad
were them.
am I a bad person for killing me if I was them? Probably. But is that the trade-off I made? Sure, maybe I lose a moral point there.
This is like a documentary and a vegan challenge.
Okay, cool. Well, I've done the vegan challenge for a few years, so. But yeah, I don't know. You're probably right. So there's that.
But if you're vegetarian, you also eat from, from the trees. Trees also the same thing, it's kind of abuse on the trees too.
So I have a sign that says it's okay to abuse animals. Prove me wrong.
I definitely think that is a really interesting sign, and I agree with it.
You agree or you disagree?
Sorry, I disagree. I disagree with it.